and thank you for those who are coming for this very special presentation tonight. I am so thrilled to introduce our special featured speaker tonight, Maggie Thompson. Just a little bit about Maggie. Maggie was born and raised in Minneapolis and received her bachelor's of Fine Arts and Textiles from RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. As a textile artist and designer, she derives her inspiration from family history, Ojibwe heritage, and the broader Native American experience. Skillfully working with both natural and synthetic materials, Maggie's multimedia artwork expands various textile traditions and heritage ways of being and becoming. In addition to many solo exhibitions, Maggie has exhibited in numerous group exhibitions all over the country. She's been awarded grants and awards from many foundations and organizations, and the resume just goes on and on. We're just so thrilled to have Maggie here. Some of you may know Makwa Studio. Maggie is the founder and owner of Makwa Studio in the Twin Cities. And beyond her, I'll stop talking, so I'm gonna let Maggie go on. You guys don't wanna hear me talk, you wanna hear me talk, but we're just so honored to have Maggie here. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm very soft-spoken, so just yell at me or give me a thumbs up. But bonjour. Hello, my name's Maggie. I'm Fond du Lac Ojibwe, but was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thank you for having me here today. I've been coming up here since I was a kid, and my family has a cabin up the Gunflint Trail. I'm really lucky to be friends with Ben and the Baughmans up there as well. And my partner's also here tonight. So thank you guys for coming, and thank you all for coming. So I'll be talking about, I have a fine arts practice and a knitwear practice, so I'll be sharing a bit about both. But first I wanted, I already forgot my first slide. That's me in a box. I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts from RISD in 2013. But I wanted to start off with some personal notes about where I come from and who my parents are, as I carry them with me every day, honoring and pay homage and honor them as well. So pictured on the left is my dad, and on the right is my mom. Each a photo when they were younger and then in their elder years. And both of my parents were artists, so I was very fortunate to grow up in a very nurturing environment and was surrounded by art and creativity starting at a very young age. My dad was a graphic designer and a musician, and my mom is a painter and a photographer. I get my notes. Okay, so my parents were divorced when I was really young, so I was mostly raised by my mom. And I'm mixed. I'm Ojibwe, native Ojibwe, and Irish and German. And my dad was always around, but didn't really share a lot about his culture and our family history, and I believe that this is a result of him attending an assimilation boarding school. Does everybody know what a boarding school is? Go over a quick history, but for those that aren't familiar, these schools were created with the primary objective of civilizing or assimilating Native American children and youth into European American culture. So kids were taken away from their families and stripped of their cultural values, and were often humiliated for speaking their language, and were put into isolation and made to feel ashamed of their Native identities. And my dad and his siblings attended Pipestone, pictured here in southern Minnesota. So, sorry, this is not my computer, so I'm not used to it. Okay, here we go. So these schools were all over the US and in Canada, and so this image just shows their locations around the country. And these schools started in 1860, with the last one closing only in 1983, 6 years before I was born, and I'm 36 years old. So today, Minnesota has 11 federally recognized tribes between the Dakota and Ojibwe people, and is one of the largest and most tribally diverse urban Native populations in the U.S. And I wanted to highlight this history because of the lost stories and disconnection to self and culture felt within my own family as it informs a lot of my work. So now moving on to my mom, her maiden name is Margaret Carroll, and who is known for, or her namesake was Margaret Carroll, who is known for hosting large feasts in Ireland for the poor and poets during the 1400s. And she was given the nickname Margaret the Hospitable for her generosity and compassion for those who suffered, a trait that I see within my mother, not only from hosting dinner parties, but through her work as a chaplain in hospice and running rental properties. So this is a picture of her paintings. I'm also in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy, so I'm very winded. But yeah, so these are some paintings that she did. She really loves coming up here and painting the Northwoods. And she primarily works in acrylics and does a lot of florals and other landscapes. And with her mobile job being in hospice, I was always receiving like lectures in the car on the way to school. And I like to think that I subconsciously soaked up some of that, even though I was probably mostly thinking about boys or something else. So, but yeah, with that said, here's a photo from one of my first sketchbooks as a kid. My mom has always been having me do art and relating it to emotions and how I was feeling. So yeah, this is just a demonstration of how I was connecting those emotions through means of art. So my mom also has a studio in the Northrop King building. I don't know if you guys have been down in the cities or visited the Northeast Arts District, but it's one of the largest artist buildings in the cities. And I think she's been there since I was in 4th grade, so it's kind of become a second home for me. And yeah, she's always been my #1 supporter, and I just have a lot of admiration for her as an artist and a mother and a friend. And she really taught me how to believe in myself and to go after my dreams through demonstration of her own commitment to her art and self-growth. So these are images of my first textiles. I went to a Waldorf school when I was really young. So that's my flute case. Do we have Waldorf students in the crowd?
My nephews.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this was the first thing I learned how to knit. I still have it in 4th grade. And then also in 4th grade, I was put into a program at the Minneapolis American Indian Center where I was able to make my own jingle dress at that young age. So this is my first beading project, doing lazy stitch. And yeah, I just wanted to share these because they're my first and contain memory and importance. In high school, I focused on more visual arts like painting and printmaking, but ended up going to school. I actually started in architecture, but at my final crit, my professor said my building looked more like a textile piece, so I quickly transferred. And yeah, I also miss like using my hands. So at RISD, we learned everything from hand knitting and weaving. So these are the floor looms, 8-harness Maycomber floor looms, to industrial knitting and weaving. So this is an industrial jacquard loom. So it's all automated weaving. Yeah, so then during my time at RISD, we were really pushed to work and play hard through the exploration of concepts, materials, color, pattern, and structure. So I was always surrounding myself by like visual inspiration, information, books, and just did a lot of like sampling. And then I also started to look at my identity and think about where I come from. And although my classes were more geared towards like design, I was really fortunate to be in a cohort where a lot of us were focusing more on fine arts. And so this is part of my final body, or my thesis, I guess. So this is a series of cookie cutters, so critiquing like cultural appropriation. I think growing up in the Native community and then moving out east where there wasn't a lot, and I think I was maybe like one of 2 or 3 Native students, you know, it was always on my mind. And then like walking into Urban Outfitters and like seeing what was out there, what people were saying or represented Native people. So these cookie cutters were of images just that I had been seeing around, especially in like fast fashion and all that. And they're 3D printed. And then this is called Family Portrait. So it's woven on an 8 harness floor loom. The warp is gold rayon, and then it's a tapestry using red, black, and white wool, and it breaks down. It relates to blood quantum. Can I get a show of hand who knows blood quantum? Most of you guys. So blood quantum is the amount of Indian blood that an individual possesses. So it was initially a system that the federal government placed onto tribes in an effort to limit their citizenship. And it's still used today by many tribes. So a lot of tribes, you can't be enrolled if you're less than like 0.25%. And some do lineage, but most still use blood, or a lot still use blood quantum. So yeah, so the family portrait. So this is my dad on the left, me in the middle, and then my mom on the right. So I get my native side from my dad, mostly German and Irish from my mom, a little bit from my dad as well. So in this piece, I'm kind of thinking about like why I identify as being Native. Is it because I'm darker skinned? Is it because the way I was raised? All these questions, and just exploring these systems of authenticity. This piece was recently included in the Shape of Power Stories of American Sculpture at the Smithsonian National American Art Museum in DC, which the Trump administration recently threatened to take down because it challenged our history and by people who have been excluded from, stories have been excluded for years. So that was a really important show to be a part of. It recently came down in the fall and is currently owned by the Minneapolis Institute of Art. This is called Assumptions, so it's made out of beer caps. I really like playing with different materials. I get bored using the same things over and over again, and I really like tying it to a concept. So it kind of represents beadwork and the association of alcoholism to Native Americans and how it's become embedded into people's perceptions of our culture and history. Just a detail. So it's, sorry, I gotta breathe. So the bottle caps are smashed and then they just have holes and are held together with jump rings. This is titled Pocahontas. So it's a nickname that was given to me in college. And it's machine knit and then has beer caps on it. And yeah, I think it just stems from a birthday party that my friends threw me where they dressed me up in like a feather bra and thong and headdress, and then everybody else dressed up as cowboys. So it was based off of that experience and the nickname, hence Pocahontas. And then after graduating, I ended up moving back home because my dad, for a little bit, and stayed because my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, so I stayed to take care of him until he passed in 2014. And during that time, I started my own studio practice. This is just an inspiration wall, I guess. So different samples, photos, quotes, drawings, all of that. And then I also started my knitwear business. And was also a curator at the Minneapolis Institute or Minneapolis American Indian Center, and then some other odd jobs I did, like I was a barista and did house cleaning, which were great. I actually really enjoyed it. And then eventually moved into a full-time practice in studio at the end of 2020. But this, so like I mentioned, my dad was sick and passed away. So during that time, I started exploring loss and grief in my work. So this is just a photograph, and being transparent about feelings is a fundamental value in my work. And usually each piece just surrounds a strong conceptual narrative. And so I started weaving photos, kind of talking about like anxiety and loss of self. And this one ended up being a larger piece. I don't have a full image of it, but that's it being woven in the studio. And then, so this piece for Love Alone is a body bag, not a real one. It's conceptual. But it's based off of a quilt that my mom made my dad when they got married. So I asked her why she made it for him, and she said for Love Alone, so that's the title. And star quilts, so the pattern on it is based off of a star quilt, which is usually given to an individual for like to honor them or in ceremony or something like that. So let's see. Yeah, so then this piece is fragments. So this one, it's a blanket. So there's fabric underneath and a sunset printed on top and then cut into triangles and then attached or adhered onto the fabric. So it kind of gets that, I don't know, the description, the word, I don't know, anyone help me? Yes, tessellated effect. But yeah, so this one, the concept behind it is, it was a sunset photo I took after my dad passed away, and he always told me to watch the sunset when I was in college whenever I missed him. So it was about like memories and keeping or how memories come the strongest at night when you're sleeping, and just like the fear of them kind of separating or fading away. Let's see. And then this piece, I honestly forget what I titled this, but it was about, so these are two twins. It was during an event at the Walker Art Center, and or it's called Bound Identity. So these are two young girls. I forget how old they were at the time, but they're watching just a movie, I think Hunt for the Wilder People. So just doing like a regular kid activity, but they're chained to the pedestals and they have shawls on them. So it was about like dressing them in something that's easily identifiable as being Native or relating to Native culture, and how no matter how they walk through life, they'll kind of be chained to that identity, or like just everything that comes with that. So, and this is called Swallow, and this I had, if you guys came through earlier, on the table. So this is a kind of like a pocketed quilt, but there's little modules inside each square, and when they're lit up from behind, you can kind of see an outline. So it's about esophageal cancer, and then the images on the quilt squares are the interior lining of an esophagus, which were transferred onto the fabric. So it's about like discovering cancer in your body. And then this is called Love. So this was a poem I wrote when I was in 4th grade. So it's just talking about like the rawness and purity of young love, and kind of what you think or hope it is going to be. And it's just sewn letters stuffed with pellets. And yeah. This is called Breadcrumbing. So based off of the euphemism referring to like the act of leading somebody on. And So it's a fence, so kind of like pretending to build a future with someone. This is from a relationship where they actually did physically build a fence. And is processing the breakup. But it's stuffed with breadcrumbs, actual breadcrumbs. And then the material used is like a clear vinyl, so it's stitched sewn together and attached to wood pieces on the back to give it its structure. So that's the detail. So again, playing with like different materials. Gotta breathe again. Okay. He loves me not. So this is again playing with vinyl and just different materials. So kind of that he loves me not, whatever, from Little Rascals or wherever. But on the left, you have a heart that's filled with feathers, like when the relationship's new and fluffy and feels good, and then something happens and it feels more prickly, so there's pins inside. You make up and it kind of feels a little more crunchy, like crunch paper, and then ends up not working out and it just feels heavy like concrete. So really thinking about materials and emotions. Quantum entanglement is about the relationship between two individuals, whether, when they're in separate spaces. So like when you think of a friend and then they end up calling you 30 seconds later, like those unexplainable connections. And so it's two hearts and another photo transfer on fabric, and then there's beads kind of connecting. So talking about like that spiritual realm or connection. And this is the full piece, so I did have a smaller version of this on the table today. And the equivocator, so a belly tied in knots with the red flags that you so delicately placed but insisted did not exist. So that was something I wrote first before creating the piece and sat with for a couple years until this came to a visual form. And this one is about just listening to your body and your gut in like abusive relationships, dysfunctional relationships, and just really trusting yourself and paying attention to those red flags. You know, it's heavy. That's why I do knitwear. So this one is called Intentions. Give me a second. But it depicts, this is more photography, but I like showing this one. Also a part of the breakup body of work. But it depicts myself posed behind a vellum curtain, spelling out the letters, my body feels like a place you only wanted to visit but never call home. So it's using my body as the catalyst between emotion and language. And I think about how it feels to be in a relationship with someone who never intended on staying or committing fully, or that feeling of being used. And then in 2022, I was invited to be a part of the Renwick Invitational in DC in 2023, which was awesome. It was the first exhibit that the Renwick Gallery was were showing with all Native artists. And so these are just some works in progress. So that first body bag that I shared with you earlier, I used as an inspiration for this project as well, except for relating to COVID and collective loss and grief during that time, because so many were unable to come together to mourn their loved ones or gather. And then the one on the right is about relating to the gut piece, talking about psychologically abusive relationships and paying attention to like words versus actions. So I'll go into it. And this I had a lot of help with. So I had a lot of friends coming in and out of the studio, and so the phrase says, I get mad because I love you, and the I love you is highlighted in like a white opaque bead, and the rest is in more like different shades of translucent whites and off-whites, so it becomes kind of harder to see depending on the angle that you're looking at it. paying attention to the I love you instead of the actions or the anger. So these are just some process photos. So we built a custom loom, and the piece was built kind of in sections. And there's just a small detail. So you could have like 3 or 4, sometimes 5 people working on it at a time, but we moved down in sections. Like this works. Yeah. You build it here, put on a new warp, and then go down again. And that's Marais. She works in the studio part-time. And then the edge of the piece is lined in jingles, which is kind of a reference to like healing and jingle dress dancing. There's everyone attaching. And the sound was really cool. I wish I had a video to show you guys, but it was really beautiful. So all glass beads lined with jingles. So that's it hung up in the space. And then just a detail of the side. It's really laborious. It gives you time to like think, process, zone out, which is what I really love about textiles. So this next piece, the body bags relating to COVID. So originally I thought I was going to be making this all on my own, which is kind of wild thinking about now. But due to like the lack of funding and broken promises from the institution, I ended up having to hire help, and then ended up actually reaching out to community for help, which in the end felt more appropriate because it was about collective loss, during COVID, and it felt weird being alone anyways. And so the project kind of took on its own, changed course and took on its own thing. So I put a call out, I think it was probably a week before the deadline for this piece. And it was amazing. Like by nightfall, like people were just showing up. Like I just started crying. Like it was amazing. And so during the days of that next week, we had like anywhere between like 30 to 40 plus people in the studio at any given time. And it was really magical. And people came, it became like less about me and just it became like a piece of the communities, which was really awesome. So it was a lesson in asking for help and reaching out to folks. So these are just some images of the people who helped. And it was really cool. Yeah, so it's made out of vinyl. I should talk about the process. And then the beads are tacked on over a rope. So it kind of looks like raised beadwork. And it's kind of quilted on top too. So that's the studio kind of at any given moment. And then there's a room in the back too. And so people would just come donate their time, stay for 30 minutes, stay for several hours, stay until 2 in the morning if they wanted. I went home and slept, but I just gave them my key. But it was awesome. So people started connecting. People were bringing in their parents, their kids. People were talking about their experiences during COVID, connecting after a time of isolation, crying, laughing. Like it was pretty cool. And it's cool to see like who continued beading afterwards and what relationships sustain themselves as well. And it also taught me to clarify my needs with institutions, which was a very important lesson as well. But yeah, so this was the final installation. So you can see the 2 larger works, and then the gut piece was also included in that show. And coming out of this, seeing how important it was to create a space for people to come create together, I really wanted to continue this in my practice. So the next project I wanted to keep doing community projects. So the next one was titled the Hospital Gown Project. And so, which I think was one of the more personal ones and communal projects that I worked on. It was very intentional. And it started from my experience with a family member suffering from alcoholism and being in the hospital with them when they had a near-death experience. So with the sense of isolation that can come from watching someone you love suffer, I decided to make it communal because I wanted to reflect the reality that addiction touches so many lives, and often in ways that are invisible or silenced. So and I say we because I have a team of folks that help in the studio, invited folks to come contribute and learn how to do brick stitch, which is what you see here, the technique used to create these beaded swatches. And we hosted open studios, and then also gave out instructions for people to contribute remotely. So over the course of, it was a little bit over a year, but the last 4 or 5 months, the first 4 or 5 months of last year, we really worked on it full time. But about over 200 pairs of hands have touched this in some way. So people could make their own swatch or just contribute. And then we wanted to be inclusive of different people. So we taught people of all ages. I think our youngest was, or I know our youngest was 4.5. And then our eldest was in her 90s. And then we used different colored beads so that people could contribute their own different sizes for age and skill level. So it was really about that inclusivity. Use this time to breathe. Yeah. And I think with this project, it was about creating a safe space to build trust, where people could feel comfortable, where they were able to have conversations about their experiences if they wanted to, or just sit in silence, just use their hands, use it as an escape. And everyone had their own way of connecting with the work and to the work. One individual I know used it as a vehicle to talk to her family member who was struggling with addiction. And then I know others have used it as a way to create closure for those who have lost family members because of it. So this, we just used a template. It was a hospital gown I got from my experience in the hospital with a family member, but we created a template out of cardboard, and I really didn't know how we were going to put it together. But we laid out all the swatches, and then we ended up we sewed them together, so kind of zigzagging between the beads or the outside row of each swatch, and that made it into a cohesive fabric. So that's the finished piece. Here's some samples just of the different beads. So we got bugles, bigger ones. I forget what they're all called. We did mostly single rows, but I think some people did stacks of 2 or 3 beads at a time to build it up faster. What I also really enjoy about this piece is the opacity of it. So the stories that don't get told on a label in a gallery, just those secret moments within the piece that you can only learn through talking with people who worked on it. But this one was made by, they each made their own swatch, but they put these 3 beads in to represent certain family members. And then this one, so these top bugle beads I had when I was a kid, so I held on to them probably for this reason. And then I ended up fostering a little kiddo for a year whose parents were struggling with addiction, and taught her how to do beadwork as well. So sandwiching those together, so that's another hidden story in there. And there's many, many more. And then that's it on my friend Josie modeling it. And I really like seeing it on a model just because it makes it activates it, becomes living. And detail. And then, so this piece is part of a series I'm currently working on titled Tug of War. So this, I'm trying to give form to like the psychological tension of being mixed and of constantly being pulled between identities. And so you have the ribbon that kind of represents the individual and the two pieces of tape. And then on the left side is like represents the native side, the white side represents the non-native side, my non-native side. And each rope has a phrase. So this one says, "I am not your white friends." So it's speaks to the kind of like internalized harm that can exist even within community when we should be like caring for each other. And it's about like the comments that critique or shame someone that end up alienating them and pushing them out or away from community. And then what kind of brown are you? Hold on, went too far. Hold on, where are we going? Okay, yes, so this, and they're all beaded loom work, so they're where you place a bead in between each, like if we have any weavers, you have your warp threads and you place a bead in between each warp thread and then go back and it locks it in place. And then they're wrapped around this thick, I feel like the rope's probably about this big. So this one's on the white side, pushing you further into the native community. And then, so this is another recent project. It's a photo series titled She Trains, and it's actually contributed a little bit, beading both these guys, I taught them. But it's a beaded BDSM pup mask. And it's the first iteration for an ongoing series that examines power dynamics within mixed relationships, specifically between Native women and white men. And the beaded pup mask serves as a symbol indigenizing the pup and suggests an act of like teaching or reorientation where he learns to see and understand her Native identity and experience on her terms. So it's about being submissive, consent, and so there's objects, so the pup mask is beaded, and then the paws are beaded, and then photographed in different scenarios. So more intimate, it's not, there's a spectrum, a scale, and it's more, anyways, less sexualized and more about like the intimacy of relationships. So she's reading a book by Louise Erdrich. And I hope to continue this I want to make more masks out of like birch bark, quill work, and using different techniques as well. And then, so this is a fancy shawl, and then made out of leftover material from a mask project we did during the uprising of after the murder of George Floyd. And so these were repurposed to make these shawls. Let me see if I have notes. It's not going the right way, hold on. So it's also kind of talks about so transforming like protest materials into regalia. It's about carrying memory through movement and about reclaiming space. So this is photographed in front of the Capitol as well, and also speaks to how during, at least in my experience going to protests, I've always seen like Native show up when there's a call for justice. And also photographing it here just because it's a site that holds political power where decisions are made and where policies are created and where historically Native voices have been excluded or erased. Yeah, these are just them flat. So it's a series of 3. And then, so I've done more activism work too, but the Ribbon Mass project was done during COVID. So using ribbon as a way to connect to other people, like, if you guys have like beaded earrings in the Native community and you see each other, you're always like, you kind of like wink or nod because it's like familiar. So kind of having that same thing, just seeing ribbon, feeling less isolated. And also talking about how it's not the first time that we've had to like survive a pandemic or historically, and yeah. And then, no, I did this wrong, sorry. Okay, so the protest mess. So the fabric used in the shawls, after doing the Ribbon Mass project, we quickly went into mask making for the protests, and screen printed I Can't Breathe, and we're passing them out daily to people who are protesting to help protect protesters from COVID. And, I partnered with a bunch of other artists as well. So some people were like screen printing, some people were sewing, cutting fabric. And then we also called on community members to come pick up kits. So we would make a kit of 20 masks that people would go sew overnight and then come back, turn in the next day. So we were able to produce about 8,000 hand-sewn masks within a week with the power of community. So that was the first time I'd done a call like that. Let's see. And then after Dante Wright was murdered, not long after, being out protesting, protesters were using umbrellas as like shields against rubber bullets and pepper spray. And so I saw a need to have something reinforced because they would just pierce through quickly. So the studio did another call to community, and we created these reinforced umbrellas with cordura fabric, so it's like a stronger tear, puncture resistant fabric to kind of strengthen or reinforce it. And so that way, if a rubber bullet hit it, it would like slow down its impact. They could use it as shielding. This was actually taken since ICE has been in the city. So we had some leftover ones that were passed out, and then there was a request for more. So we also recently did another group of, we opened up the studio again for people to come make them recently. And I think this is also a part of my studio practice that I want to keep doing, is being able to respond to community needs when there's a call or an idea or whatever, to protect one another, communities. They're just people working on them. We also did light up signs. So these are made out of like corrugated plastic, and then they have, oh my goodness, vinyl lettering on it, and then you drill into the letters and you put lights on the back of them. Different than fiber, but still an important part of my practice, so I wanted to share. And then we did an action on the first shutdown a couple weeks ago, where we went out on a bridge and held them. So it says, "No one is illegal on stolen land." So they're big light up letters. And, I think about, especially during these times, how important art is. I'm sure you guys have been seeing like different art, like posters, patches, different forms of demonstrating and like speaking out. It's a way to process the grief, resistance, joy, care, and truth. And we wanted to do this just because, the land was taken and borders were imposed and on Indigenous peoples, and they were displaced back in the day, so these same systems are now the ones targeting immigrants and refugees. So paying homage to our history here, and they're just a reminder that our communities are watching and organizing, and that we're here to protect one another. So doing some community work during everything that's going on in the cities. And on that note, how are we doing on time? I feel like, oh man, time's flying. Okay. Just getting to my knitwear practice. I'll try to speed through this. Yeah, so that's my fine arts practice. So fine art, activism, and then I have knitwear. So this is kind of like my release or my outward side. So Makwa is my studio name. Makwa Studio means bear in Ojibwe. And yeah, it's just a fun way where I bring like subtle cultural references to my patterns and designs, and just like create more accessible art. And it's able to like engage in the larger discussion of what Native art and contemporary fashion, Native art and fashion is or can be. So these are some works in progress, values. So we make cowls, so these just kind of like pop up over your head and sit on your neck. Hats and hoodie scarves. And they're made out of wool, just for like warmth reasons. And when I first started my business, I like to tell the story. I only started with one ball of yarn, or 2 balls of yarn. Knit a hat, sold it, bought more yarn, knit 2, sold it. You know, so it was very like slow building. And just, I just try to say that's because people just gotta start somewhere. If they have a dream, just go for it. It can be small, it's fine. And yeah, so this is a picture of a hand flat vintage Brother knitting machine. So this is what we have historically been using to make all of our hats and cowls. So you basically push, there's these little latch hooks right here, and your yarn goes around each one of these latch hooks, and then you put your yarn in a carriage and it moves it across, and then the yarn gets carried and across these little latch hooks. It hooks it, pulls it through, and that's how you get your stitch. So it's a lot faster than hand knitting. And then in between industrial knitting and hand knitting. So this pattern is our the otter tracks pattern. You guys are familiar. And yeah, so the otter runs and slides on its belly. I love that you guys are giggling at this. I also love that everyone's knitting in the row. I forgot to say that. But yeah, so it's used in a lot of like beadwork. This is a bandolier bag, so you can see them on the side. So kind of referencing or bringing out those patterns, educating. And then that's just my brother and an otter. Not really a lot to say. They have the same expression, I don't know. And then just different colorways, so playing with different colors. Some more variations, a floral cowl, bric rack, just based on like different materials being used. These are probably some of the more popular designs, backbone and tooth. Yeah, so that's kind of what we do now, or did. And then I also collaborate with different brands. So Asco Finlayson was one collaboration I did, and they've since closed, but they were really like into tracking like their carbon footprint and just like green solutions, and so partnering with like minded businesses. But they used to create these iconic North hats. I don't know if you guys recognize those, but I feel like they were everywhere in Minnesota for a length of time. but I got to partner with them and we did a version in Ojibwe, which was really cool. And that was a lot of fun, and it was cool to see like both native and non-native communities get them and wear them, and just like the pride and the joy, and like seeing a kid named Uwaden wearing his hat. Like, I don't know. And then you have the otter tracks up top too. And then I also did a collaboration with Rumpel, which was a lot of fun. So it's based off of the original weaving I did, which you've also seen in the cowl as well. And then this is finger weaving, just with really large ropes. And this is more, sorry. Okay, something in my chest. So this is, was a work that I was working on for Dogwood Coffee down in the cities. We did a lot of work with them for a space of theirs. And that's the finished piece. It's made of out border. Yeah, okay, anyway, I'll just jump in. So mostly up until that point I've been doing knitting on that hand flat knitting machine. But with demand, production, and labor, and just like the increasing work for just working more on fine arts, I was thinking of ways to grow. And so when I was in school, I did industrial knitting. So I wanted to get my certification in stole knitting. So I went to Germany and furthered that outside of school. So this is an industrial knitting machine, so it's all computer programming, and then you basically plug in a flash drive once you got your file, and it knits it out like a printer. And so, just from my trip, yeah. And then that's kind of on the right is what the program looks like, and then the outcome. And this was during that training time. And yeah, it was a really cool experience because part of it was they would hand you swatches and you had to dissect it and then like remake it. So I feel like if you give me, I won't say any knit structure, but a lot of different, I can pick out, if you hand me a piece of fabric, I could probably pick it out, program it and knit it, which was awesome, like a cool thing to learn. And then, yeah, so with industrial knitting, it's how a lot of like clothing is made. You can do a lot of cool stuff. So it's a mask, a skateboard. It's how like knit shoes are made. And then, yeah, so then I did a fundraiser for it to get one a few years ago, and I used social media as a fundraising tool. And then I partnered with Minnesota Knitting Mill to do some hats, limited edition hats. And so through like donations, hat sales, and then I partnered with Dogwood Coffee where they donated the profits to the cause. I was able to reach that amount. So yeah, and then these are goals we're still working on. But the machine is in the studio. We're doing smaller projects right now, but switching from the hand flat knitting machine to doing this full time. And I'm really interested in, just like working with other artists, experimenting with like structural techniques. Here's the kids, I call them the kids stringing up the machine. And then also working with other Native artists. So this is a project that I started last year and we're gonna launch hopefully this spring. But talking about different tribal florals between like Ojibwe, Dakota, and Lakota tribes. And so these are three different artists that we're working with. We're gonna be making scarves and talking about those differences. And then also thinking about like wealth distribution. So usually as an artist, when you work with a company, you get 5 to 7% of profit. And so it's kind of flipping that narrative and in the way that Dogwood helped me by giving 100% of profits to reach my goal. It's a way to like continue that momentum forward and helping other people reach their future goals, and to see kind of what can happen when you give more and take less, as like cover what you need to for a business, for really pay your artists so that they can continue to do the important work that they do. And then, yeah, this is just another scarf. I don't know why I put that there. Anyways, it was also made on the machine, so more structure. Again, my friend Josie modeling. And that's it. That's it. So thank you guys. We have time for questions?
Yeah, totally.
If anyone has questions.
Want me to turn the lights up?
Sure.
Okay, brace yourselves.
Yeah.
How did you learn how to use the flat
Oh, yeah.
knitting machine?
In school. So yeah, I went to the class. Yeah. But I hear you guys have classes for knitting here. Yeah. Thank you.
Not machine.
Okay, no machine yet. Anyways.
Okay.
Yes. But yeah, I was very fortunate to take a class. It was like a winter session class. Yeah. And then teaching. There's a lot of good YouTube videos and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you hope to work on next?
What am I working on next? I have a couple ideas. I'm gonna work on kind of another large scale beaded loomwork piece, but it's based off of one of my mom's tablecloths. And in college, she used to send me letters or quotes. And one thing she always used to tell me was, always remember the 13th commandment, don't let the bastards get you down. So I'm gonna do that on the tablecloth, and then talking about her namesake. I really want to host a dinner on top of it when it's finished, and talking about like the preciousness of artwork. Working with institutions, I've come across like, you know, they always want to preserve and like keep you like in their collection, and like using, oh my god, what's the word? Anyways, materials that don't archival. Thank you. Yeah, that word. So it's kind of taking that away and talking about the pieces like a living work. And then another one I want to work on is, like I mentioned, I'm pregnant, and just thinking about just everything going on in the cities, and what happened at Brown recently, which was across the street from where I went to college. And then obviously Annunciation schools and other shootings across the country, but like creating like a Kevlar belly shape, and like using bullets and beads, and talking about gun safety and that too. So those are the projects I'm thinking about. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get into the German program?
Yeah, they have a full training program, so I just gave them an email.
Wow.
And signed up. Yeah, you gotta pay for it. But it's really in depth. Like it's full time for like 2 or 3 weeks, depending on which course. Yeah, and I kind of did that instead of grad school, I guess. I was like trying to focus on that. Yeah. Yep.
How much did the hospital gown weigh?
How much did it weigh?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really heavy. Yeah. Yeah. I should have asked the shipping folks. I was like, that's your department. But yeah, actually, side note, shipping artwork is like a whole art in and of itself. It's amazing. Like the boxes created to like move artwork across the country. I wish I had photos of that to show you guys too. Yeah. Any other questions?
If you put out another call for community support on a project, what's the best way to learn about it?
Yeah, I do have a newsletter, but the fastest way is always Instagram and social media. fairly active on there. Trying to be less active, but mostly active on there.
When you think of like your fine arts practice and this network that you do you find it to be fluid when you're thinking about the two of them, or do you ever find they're like in opposition with each other?
Just in terms of finding time, I think it's hard to balance, and I haven't quite figured out how to do it well. And then I think energy-wise, it goes in waves. Like sometimes I'm just really into the fine art, and sometimes I just need a break and then switch.
In conjunction with that question, how do you separate the two ideas when making your more commercial work? How do you not let your fine art background totally bleed into your like commercial?
Yeah, I think just by having like a solid product, like a still, and then I think where it can get tricky is like with the finger weaving, because that could be still considered like more art focused. But I think if I'm like producing like multiple quantities of something, then that to me defines like the business versus fine art, which is more conceptual in that sense.
Some of these bigger projects, is it commissions from institutions, or are you doing grant writing? Like, how do you buy that many beads to make a gown like that?
Looking at you. Sometimes grants. Sometimes, like with the yarn, I buy like one bag of beads at a time and build it as I can. With the Renwick pieces, part of the false promises was a stipend to create new work, which didn't come. So that one I did start with beads, and then I did enter a relationship with the gallery and receive financial support from them. So it just depends, but I try to do mostly grant writing, and then if the work sells, that's awesome too. But there are more pieces for like institutions.
Assuming this is your first baby.
Yes.
Okay. So I was really struck by your journaling that your mom had you do.
Yeah.
And like as you're becoming a parent, do you have thoughts about that, sort of reflecting on what that meant to you and what you might do?
Yeah. I mean, I think there'll be I want to, if they're into it, expose them to art from a very young age. I think doing collaborations with a kiddo would be fun. This summer I got a grant to go to the Arboretum. So she'll be here, she's due in April, but it's a grant that's with my mom, so it'll be 3 generations going and creating work on the flowers there and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I want to definitely keep her involved in the art if that's what she wants. Yeah.
Can you talk about the sourcing of the wool that you use in your knitting?
Yeah, I use a company called Jagger Spun. They were located in Maine, and it's a company that I was exposed to in school. Unfortunately, they closed down, so I think production costs were getting too high. And right now, I'm looking at a company called Suede Wool, but they're in Germany. But yeah.
Thanks so much, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you guys.